Here we go, writers, readers, everything in between. I'm excited to deliver today's show. I'm reconnecting with Jeffrey. I had him on a mental health break. He's an inspiration, and he loves using his story to pay forward. And today, we're talking about a book that I promise you won't be able to put down. Let me preview a bit. On October 4th, 2016, Jeff Johnston received the phone call that is every parent's worst nightmare. In a single moment, their lives had changed forever. This One's for You is the story of one family's struggle with addiction and their journey to find inspiration and meaning in the loss of a son and brother. Jeffrey, welcome back to one of my shows. Thank you for coming back on.
Yeah, Vincent, it's been great to cross paths with you and do the advocacy and collaborate and talk about these issues because, you know, unfortunately, the numbers aren't getting any better. There's 825 Americans that die from overdose, suicide, and alcohol per day. And that's something that, you know, we have to draw a line in the sand, and we have to start figuring out ways to get these. It's not just the kids, it's the adults as well, to start making better choices and be accountable for those choices.
Well, thank you for all you do in that advocacy. This is Writing with Authors. He was on a mental health break, as I mentioned. Just scroll down into the episode description. If you like today's conversation, you'll learn a whole lot more about Jeff. But here on Writing with Authors, this is the podcast where I sit down with published writers all over the world to help you on your journey. Whether you're an aspiring writer or you already have 10 books, something from each episode will stick with you. I promise you that. And as I mentioned, Jeffrey, he's an incredible individual, making a difference in so many ways. And I want to touch on a little more of this book before bringing him back on. Heroin may have taken Seth at the young age of 23, but it wasn't going to take the opportunity to continue his story. Were there warning signs? Was the outcome preventable? You're using his story, continuing his story, Jeffrey, and making a difference. You mentioned those numbers are still very alarming. They're very, very high. You're doing your part, putting out the right information, putting out so much of it too. You got to stick around to the end of the episode, find out how to find him on social media and LinkedIn. I know how consuming it is, and he still makes time. He's on LinkedIn every time I scroll on, which is only once or twice a day. So I had to show you some love there, Jeffrey. But we're on all things writing today. We're talking about the book. What led to this book, book number one?
I'll be real blunt with you. When our son, Seth, was poisoned by fentanyl at the age of 23, he died October 4th, 2016. 3 weeks later, his beautiful, lovely daughter was born, Brighton, and she's 6 now. And she doesn't have a dad, and the mom is no longer in her life as well. And the book, to me, was to continue the legacy of my son, our son, Seth, who died. That someday Brighton would come to us and say, "Hey, Grandpa, I want to know about my dad." And so it was important for me to get all this stuff I had in my head, all the stories, good and bad, all the different, perspectives and angles and conversations we had and memories, put that in writing.
Yep.
So someday when she came to me, I could say, "You know what, honey, here's a book about your dad." You know, and to make sure she gets the full picture, because Seth died from heroin, but that was not who he was. Obviously, people who lose these fights to substance use and addiction, that's not who they are. It doesn't define them. So it was important for me, Vincent. It was imperative for me to continue his legacy the best way I could. And so writing became the way for me to do that.
I love that. I'm putting it here in the show notes. How you pass away does not define you. He lived a great life, and you're highlighting all the great things he did. He left a legacy behind with his daughter. And one more time, what is the full name of this book for everyone viewing on today?
Yeah, it's This One's for You, an inspirational journey through addiction, death, and meaning. And the phrase "this one's for you" comes from when Seth died. His middle brother, Ian, was a golfer. Was a sophomore in high school golf. And when Ian raised about $25,000 that next year in golf while in high school, matter of fact, they have an award named after him still, called the Ian Johnston Award at his high school. And Ian, when he made a putt, he would point his putter to the sky and he would say, "This one's for you, big brother." And that was that. I saw him do that so many times, and I thought, what a great title for the book. This One's for You, you know, because I want to make the book uplifting. I don't want it to be read and have people get depressed. That's not what Seth's death is about, and that's not what our life is about.
Well, I love the meaning behind the title. Just so much love for the whole project you put into it, but I'm just at a loss for words. You just do such great work, and what took me away from our first interview here, Jeff, was that you made it a point you're going to carry their stories forward.
Right.
Whether it was with the book or with not, you're going to
Right.
continue on a legacy. And I want to use that as a challenge and a motivation to everyone viewing on today. Carry the legacy on, carry that on when people who pass away, because I'm sure he'd be so proud of this book that you put out into the world, although it is about maybe not the most happy of topics.
Yeah.
You found a way to be uplifting through your podcast, through your books. And I
Right.
think that's just, it's setting an example for so many. Pay forward with your story, pay forward with your experiences, because you never know who you'll just be able to help. And I think that we're both great examples of that. We both have our stories into books, and day by day, we're making a bit of a difference. But I want to now ask you, Jeffrey, what's some advice you had for people when you wrote this book? I know it's not easy to get it done start to finish.
Yeah.
Describe that.
For me, I didn't set out to become an author. That wasn't my plan. Matter of fact, I've never looked to this day how many books I've sold. I've never counted how much money. I that was not my purpose. It still isn't my purpose. And whether I write another book or not, I don't know. I was very intentional to make it a semi-memoir, obviously about my story, but make it less about me and more about the people in my life. And so that became a compelling force of writing the book. I didn't want to make this about me.
Right.
That's just not what was the initial intent. But I had to talk about my life to get to some of the stories I wanted to cover. So I think there's beauty in being vulnerable. And you know that, Vincent, because you share your story frequently with people on all social media. And that's one of the reasons why I was attracted to, your efforts that you have going for mental health and mental wellness. But, the book just kind of happened. I just started writing. I didn't have chapters in mind. I didn't have a name for the book till halfway done. I just kept thinking to myself, I got to write a diary about Seth. I have to write about what funny stories can I think of? And I'd go look at pictures and it would remind me of a story. I would just start writing. And then all of a sudden these chapters started coming together. And, I never had writer's block ever. I never had a time where I just looked, because actually I had too much in my mind. I had too many things to write down. So I never ran out of topics. And I didn't have an idea of how many words I wanted to write, Vincent, or I didn't have an ending in sight. I just figured, you know what, when I'm done telling the story, I'll be done.
Well, I think that's advice in itself. You don't have to have this crazy plan, this itty bitty committee in your head telling you not to start this book. Just get out there and start. It's inspiring. And this episode's been, you may not be able to tell, but it's rather hard for me to deliver because of the resonation we have, Jeffrey.
Right.
Where the parents' phone call, it really does hit home all the work you're doing, because it just goes so far. There are others out there. You are not alone. If you have a family member, if you're in the shoes that Jeff's in right now, you lost someone, reach out to this guy. He is so friendly and he's always looking to help. Jeff, you said maybe the second book. Do you know what the second book would be on? Would it be a continuation of this, something new?
I think it would be on the angle of vulnerability and storytelling. So it'd be probably about our journey that we did last summer around the country. And then sharing the heroic stories that I met from people that, just random people at a KOA campsite or at a gas station. People would come up and say, "Hey, what's the RV about?" And then, within a couple minutes, I'm hugging a stranger and crying with them, in a parking lot of a gas station. It's like, there's something epic about that. There's something just awesome about that. And so it became less of a narcissistic trip for me going around the country, me. It was more about, I want to hear about Vincent. I want to hear about, what your why is, what your purpose in life is,
That would be amazing.
Yeah, it was just, humbling. I was honored that, death had come into my life twice to give me this inspiration to become a better person. And it would have been easy for me to go down what I say, the bitter road, and drank and got mad and blamed everybody. But I just looked at it as an opportunity and not a curse. That's kind of what and I know you've done the same thing, Vince, and I followed your story, and you have plenty of reasons to fall back on old narratives and get depressed and down. And not that you and I don't fight things every day, we do. But the books, the podcasts, those are all extensions of our release. It's our therapy to do these things. I get so much out of just conversations like with you today, that will carry me on to my next conversations that I have.
I find writing to be very therapeutic as well. And these podcast conversations starting this series was a blessing in disguise. It all started when I wrote my first book. I said, how can I keep getting my message out there? How can I do this on a solopreneur budget? Started a mental health break. But then as an entrepreneur full time, you don't have the best insurance. Here comes COVID and you need that therapy. Okay, I have this podcast where I'm having 2-3 Zooms a day because everybody's stuck home.
Right.
Just having my own therapy sessions back and forth. And I think it's just an opportunity. Like you said, I took the opportunity of using my accident for something not just bad, something good, extending it. And then fast forward now, here we are years later, connecting with Jeffrey, learning Jeffrey's story. Where can everybody not only find this book, find more about you, to say hello, reach out to talk if they need?
Yeah, this one's for you. An Inspirational Journey Through Addiction, Death, and Meaning is on Amazon. I also did the audiobook, so I did that on my voice. I wanted to be very, very authentic with that and genuine. It was very important for me not to hire someone to tell my story. I'm reachable on our websites. It's www.livingundeterred.com. And then we have a second one, livingundeterred.org. You can reach me at email, jeff@livingundeterred.org as well. And our next projects, we have an app launching sometime this summer that's going to be really geared towards Gen Z, mental health, taking the one thing that's their enemy, that's their cell phone, and making it their biggest ally. And that's been a challenge. It's been tough. They have an 8-second attention span. So, how do you talk about something like mental health to kids that, or rather look at TikTok cat videos, It's tough.
I know. I get it. It's so tough because it's not glorified. It's not the sexy Joe Rogan podcast where you get all these fun topics. This is stuff where you have to have a certain kind of mindset, I should say, to tune into this show. Self-improvement, maybe one, realizing you're not alone, maybe another. There are a lot of reasons, but be sure to check out all Jeffrey has to offer, whether it's a podcast, the book, you name it. He's on LinkedIn, putting up great content every day. And we are at Writing with Authors, and I am at Vincent A. Lancey. And Jeffrey, thank you for stopping by.
Keep living undeterred, my friend.